Hi everyone, welcome to our Joyful and Merry Quilting channel. I am so excited about the tutorial that I have prepared for today. We're going to tackle a classic unit, the flying geese. I'm going to show you 3 different methods for creating these versatile units. So whether you're a beginner or a seasoned pro, I think there's something for everyone. Here's what we're going to be covering. Method 1, the cut big and cut back method. Perfect if you're making 1 flying geese at a time. Method 2 is the 4 at a time method. Now there's no wiggle room here for accuracy, but it's really quick. And then my personal favorite, method 3, foundation pieced flying geese. We're gonna make 4 of those. This method gives you the most precision, and to make it even easier, I have a free handout with the foundation paper template and step-by-step instructions just for you. So check the link in the description to download the PDF. Then grab your fabric and let's get flying. For the 3 methods that I'm going to show you, I am only going to demonstrate the 2" by 4" finished flying geese unit size. That means 2.5 by 4.5 unfinished. There are other sizes too, but this is the size that is most commonly used, so that's why I'm going to demo this one. My first method is called the cut big and the cut back method. This is perfect. The flying geese unit comes out perfectly. You can only do 1 at a time. There is some waste when you trim back, but in the end, everything works out well. You'll need 4 3/4 by 2 3/4 inch fabric for your geese unit, and then you'll need 2 squares, 2 3/4 inch by 2 3/4 inch for the corner background fabric. So once you've cut those and you're ready to go, you'll also need a ruler. I use my 2.5 by 12.5 inch ruler. It works well for this particular size unit. You can also use a square ruler, that will work. I love using the Flying Geese block lock ruler. This is what really squares everything up for me perfectly. So any of these will work. This is my favorite. So let's go ahead and just make 1 Flying Geese unit. You'll also need pins for this. I think pins are important. Some people use them, some don't. My preference is to use them. So we've cut our 3 different pieces, our 2 3/4 by 2 3/4 inch squares, and our 2 3/4 by 4 3/4 inch rectangle. On the 2 squares, you'll turn it wrong side up. I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to mark a diagonal pencil line. This is just a mechanical pencil, 0.7 millimeter. Make sure that you have your ruler down corner to corner on top of the wrong side of your square. Now, when you mark with your pencil, you're going to mark and mark, but it can slip a little bit, so make sure that you're holding it down well as you're making that line. So I've drawn those 2 lines. Now we're going to position the first one on the left side of our rectangle. This is where I like to use my glue stick. You can also use pins, but the glue stick works really well for me. So this is a washable Elmer's glue stick. I'm going to open it up and I'm just going to take and put a little dab of glue right there in the corner and pat it down. Then I don't need to use pins. If you want to use pins, you certainly can. If you're going to pin it, I'll just show you. You want to make sure that they are pinned right here and right here in these corners. This is what's going to stabilize this piece. Then you can remove your pin as you're sewing, but this is where they need to go. This is going to keep everything so it doesn't shift while you're sewing. So whatever your preference is, go ahead and you'll sew on that marked line. So I have done that. I've sewn on the marked line. The next thing we're going to do is trim our seam. So just keep in mind, we sew, we trim, we press. Those are the 3 things that we do in this. So let's take our 1/4 inch marking on our ruler. We're going to place it right on that sewn seam. Now we have sewn directly on top of the marked line, right on it, not to the side, not to either side, right on the marked line. And we are going to trim a 1/4 inch seam. So there we go, nicely trimmed. Then we'll press it toward the background fabric. Now I like to use my pressing marker filled with my pressing solution just to make sure that I have this nice and flat. Makes a difference when it comes to accuracy. So I just put a little bit of pressing solution on there. I'm going to press it. You're just going to hold it on there. You don't want to rub it around on the fabric just because it can distort. So there we have it, nice and flat, and we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Take our marked square, now pay attention to the direction of the diagonal line, put everything lined up, then again I'm going to use my glue stick, just put a little dab of glue on there to hold that piece in place, and then I'm going to sew directly on that marked line. So go ahead and do that. There we have the marked line. We've sewn on it, directly on it. We're going to cut the 1/4 seam. Remember, we sew, we trim, we press. So we're placing the dashed 1/4 marking of my ruler right on top of that line that we've sewn, and then we'll trim the corner off. So now we have this ready to press. I'm going to put my pressing solution. If you don't use pressing solution, totally up to you. I like using it. And there we have our almost finished unit. This is where we need to trim. Take your ruler. It's an unfinished size of 2.5 by 4.5. So when we position our ruler on the Flying Geese unit, we can see there's a little bit of extra because we cut big and we're trimming back. The points that we want to be careful of when we're using a ruler, this is the most critical point right here. You want to make sure that the dashed 1/4 marking is just intersecting the very top point of your Flying Geese unit, that corner. Now the other thing is we want to make sure that our corners are also in the right spot, because this is where we are going to line up the corner of our ruler with that diagonal line, and then our 4.5-inch marking right here is also going to intersect where the diagonal is. That's how we trim. So we would take this, we're going to trim here, we're going to trim here, then we'll flip it around and do the same thing. As I said, you can also use a square ruler if you want. This is a 4.5-inch ruler, so it works nicely. Again, I want to make sure that my 2.5-inch and my 2.5-inch intersects the diagonal. That's what's going to give us accuracy. And then we want to make sure right here, this one doesn't have a marked line that's easily seen, but you'll want to make sure you've got a 1/4 inch from here to here in order to make this accurate. My favorite way to do this is using the Flying Geese ruler. It just snugs right up in that point. The corners automatically are in the right spot. And then I'm just going to trim, flip that around, trim again. Either way you do it, you get a perfect 2.5-inch by 4.5-inch unfinished Flying Geese unit when you use method 1. So let's go to method 2. Our second method is the 4 at a time method. You'll need one 5.5 by 5.5-inch square of your Geese fabric and 4 3-inch squares of your background fabric. There is no wiggle room in this when it comes to accuracy, so you need to be really careful that you follow everything exactly, that you cut everything exactly, and that you sew on the lines as outlined. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to mark the wrong side of our 3-inch squares with a diagonal line down from corner to corner, and then we're going to place our ruler on that diagonal line. The 1/4 inch marking of our ruler is going to be placed directly on the diagonal line, and we're going to draw another line on the right side, flip it around, place that 1/4 inch marking once again directly on that diagonal line, and make another line. So we have 1/4 inch seam allowances between our cutting line. These are our sewing lines. This is our cutting line. So once you've done that, do that to all 4. We're going to position 2 of them on our 5.5 by 5.5-inch square. So you want to connect the lines on here as you position these squares on top. There's going to be some overlap here, and right here is where these lines are going to connect, because you're going to sew down this side and you're going to sew down this side. You're going to cut apart on that center line. Now you need to pin this in order to keep everything straight. The pins go in kind of a weird spot. They're going to go here and here. This is what's going to stabilize these squares as you sew them. Those are going to hold on and stabilize them. You're going to do the same thing here and here. And then you'll be able to go. Now if you want to, you can put another pin here. Just make sure that you pull it out when you get to this point here so that you don't run over your pin. So what you're going to do is sew on this line, sew on this line, and then we'll cut those pieces apart on the cutting line. So I have done that. I've sewn on those two lines. I'm going to remove my pins, and then I'm going to set my seam. That just means that we're going to place our iron on top of that seam just to make those threads a part of our fabric. It just flattens everything out a little bit. You can see the difference here. Now we're going to cut that apart on the center cutting line. So I'm going to line my ruler up corner to corner just like I did before when I marked the lines, and then I'm going to cut this apart. So now we have two interesting looking pieces. They look like this, and we need to press toward the background triangles. Again, I like to use my pressing marker. I'm just going to draw or mark right along that line, that sewing line. I'm not going to open it up. You can do it either way. You can open it up and put the pressing solution on, or it's easy to do it this way too, and it soaks in. Then we are going to press it in this direction. So do that to both pieces. You can see how flat that is. You want to make sure that the solution is dry. And there we have our two pieces. Now, they don't look like flying geese yet, but you can see they're going to. The next thing we're going to do is those final two squares. We're going to match up the corners once again, and our sewing cutting line will be going in this direction, just like I have it. Make sure that your raw edges are lined up nicely, and you're going to pin once more. Now this time, I find that it works well to just pin here, and it does hold it stable enough for me anyway, so that I can sew on this line, sew on this line. Do the same thing to this one. We're almost ready to cut them apart, and that's going to give us our 4 flying geese units, and you'll see that in just a second. So we're going to go ahead, sew here, sew here, sew here, sew here. So there we have, those pieces are sewn, and we're going to cut them apart on the cutting line. And basically that's it once we've pressed it. There is no trimming, maybe a teeny tiny bit, but like I said, there really isn't any wiggle room for accuracy on this particular block. So trimming really isn't essential. So here we have the 4 units. Once again, I'm going to use my pressing marker so that I get a nice flat unit. And that also means when it's nice and flat, that my corner, when I open it up, has a better chance of being accurate because I have pressed it so nice and flat in this direction. We will be trimming off those dog ears, so I'll show you that. Okay, so there's my 4 units. As you can see, they look kind of sloppy right now, and I do need to trim them up. So I'm going to use my block lock ruler just because for me it's the most accurate. And if you take a look at my first one, this one really is pretty good. There's some trimming that needs to be done, but it looks like, now no trimming across the top. As I said, there's not a lot of trimming when you use this method. But of course you want to get those dog ears off of there, and then it looks like I've got a little bit extra across the bottom. So you can see I did do some trimming on this particular unit. So this one's perfect. This one looks good. Now if you look down here, not quite connected there, but it's okay. So let's try the next one and see how that one goes. And I'm just going to check them just to see. We won't trim them right now. And this one looks pretty good too. I'm able to trim along the edge. I'm a little short here, but not enough to make any kind of a difference. Looks like I need to trim that a little bit better. Okay, so there is this particular unit. Then we've got 2 more to do, and that's going to give us our 4, and we're just going to check this one. Now, as you can see on this one, I am a little short right here, but I'm okay here, so I'm just going to make sure when I add that into my block or my quilt that I am careful there. This one, again, I'm a little short right there. It's just not super 100% predictable. Good enough. It will work in a quilt. It's accurate enough that we do have some decent seams on here, but sometimes they do get a little curvy, a little bit wobbly. So you'll want to take note of that when you're doing the 4 at one time method. Now, my favorite method. Here is the handout. This is a free handout. The link is in the description. You can get that on our joyfulandmerryquilting.com website. And this is a handout with all the step-by-step instructions on how to actually do 4 at one time. 1, 2, 3, 4. The instructions are here with all the illustrations and graphics. And in the end, you also get a copy of the foundation pattern for those 4 flying geese units. These are absolutely perfect. If you're not into foundation piecing, you may want to do one of the other methods. But I have found that this gives me a beautiful block, and I don't need a block lock ruler. I don't need anything special. All I need is to be able to print off these patterns that are on page 4 and then use those. So I'll show you how. So for this particular method, you'll need to print off a copy of page 4 in the handout. This will give you 2 units. Now look in the handout. It shows you that you are going to cut these out on the outside line, not the trimming line, on the outside line. So you'll have 1 square, 2 squares. So I have done that. You will also need 2 of these 5.5 by 6.5 inch. This is the center part of your flying geese unit. You'll need 2 of those, and then you'll need 4 4-inch squares, 2 for each one of the foundation patterns that we're going to be using. Before I do anything, I always perforate my lines on my pattern. So I'm going to cut out this pattern on the outside lines first before I begin. And then I want to make sure that you either have a perforating blade, a tracing wheel, or just a ruler with a nice flat edge, an add-a-quarter ruler possibly, where you can use the edge to fold your paper. It's really important that you fold it accurately so that you can trim an accurate 1/4-inch seam as you go along. It's not hard, just needs to be done. So I'm just going to show you one. This is my perforating blade. It's just an Olfa cutter. You can buy it on Amazon. Links in the description. And you can perforate the lines between the 1-3 piece and the 1-2 piece. So you'll perforate all of those lines right at the start, and you go right off the edge. That's going to help you to remove the paper easily and also to fold it back easily. If you don't have one of those, you can use one of these tracing wheels. This doesn't perforate because it's not a blade, but it will help you with folding. So that's another option. The last option is using a ruler. I like the add-a-quarter ruler, and you just use that here and you fold your paper back. So I'm going to show you my perforating blade just because that's my favorite. And I am going to perforate the 1-2, 1-3, 1-4, and 1-5 diagonal lines. Now don't push down and don't go back and forth. One swipe is it, because you're cutting your paper. And the more that you run that blade, the more holes there are in your paper, and it can come apart. So you want to be careful. If it does come apart, just put a piece of tape on it. It won't hurt it, and it'll keep everything together until you're finished making the block. So I very lightly run my perforating blade on here. I'm barely putting any pressure on it. So let's go. We're going to start out with that 1-2 triangle. So we're going to take that larger piece, the 5.5 by 6.5 inch piece of geese fabric, and we're going to center it wrong side up with the marked side of our paper facing up. Center it, and then I like to take just a little dab of glue, and I'm going to put it right in the middle of this piece, section 1 here, just to hold it in place while we are sewing. That way it doesn't move around and shift. So I have those down. The next thing we need to do is trim our 1/4-inch seams all the way around. You can do that all at once. All you have to do is, I like my add-a-quarter ruler, but again, you can use any ruler. I've perforated, so look, that just folds back. I don't have to do anything other than just let it fold back on itself. And then I'm going to place that 1/4-inch marking. It's got like a divot in here that keeps the ruler from shifting. and I'm going to cut off that piece. There is some waste. Some people save those pieces. Doesn't matter what order you do this in. You're just going to fold each one back on itself. If you want, you can use this ruler. Make sure you line up your 1/4 inch marking right on the fold. That works. I'm going to go all the way around the edge. Do it again. You can see that it just folds back so nicely. And the tracing wheel will fold it back nicely also. It's just not as slick as the Olfa perforating blade. So there we have all 4 of our sides cut, and we are ready to add those triangles. Now, again, doesn't matter what order, but I like to do across from each other. It just seems to be an easy way to do it. That way we can trim at one time. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that the middle of our triangle matches up with the point on our paper. So if you want, you can fold right sides together, give yourself a little midpoint there. If you want to mark it, you can. You don't have to. And then you're going to take your ruler and place a line of your ruler on that raw edge. Then if you look, you want to make sure that your points line up. You can see I need to move it over just a tiny bit. They are oversized, so it's not a huge deal. So there we go. I've got that lined up nicely, and I'm going to put a pin in it, and then you're going to turn it over. You're going to sew on the 1-2 line. You're going to start way back here, sew all the way down, and sew off the edge of the paper. Even though the line doesn't go that far, just keep sewing until you're done. Then you're going to press it. I put my pressing marker solution on here and press it toward the corner triangle. So I have done that. I have sewn on the marked line. I started back here. I continued off the edge. I sewed right on that line, and now I'm gonna give it a little solution there and press it toward the triangle. You want to press it again until the solution is dry and you have a nice flat seam. Now I'm going to do this one over here just because I like to do them across from each other. Same process. You can just take a look at this. After a while you get good at it, and you can see if this lines up. I always use my ruler to make sure, putting a line on my ruler right in line so that everything looks good, and it does. And then I will go ahead and pin that again. Then you just sew once again on that marked line. You sew on the marked line, you press toward the triangle once again, and now you've got 2 on there. You have 2 left to do. So I have sewn all of my triangles onto that center piece using the foundation piece lines. Now it's time to trim. This is where it's really important that you look. You are going to be trimming on the inside line. This is pretty unusual when it comes to foundation piecing, because normally we would trim on the outside line, but our seam allowance is actually included in this center section. So this is where we're going to cut. If you cut on the outside, they're not going to be accurate. We're going to cut where it says trimming lines, and the arrows point right at those trimming lines. Okay, and now we have our final 2 trimming lines, and you're going to be so happy with what you see. Look at those beautiful, perfect flying geese units. And then all we have to do, when we look at it, we've got a nice 4.5 inch by 2.5 inch. We are going to just pull that paper off, which comes off easily because we perforated everything. And we are going to do the same thing. You should be doing both of those since we did 4 at one time. You can do both of those at the same time. I just showed you 2 here. So from the foundation pattern on page 4 that we have cut out, we get 4 absolutely perfect, absolutely beautiful flying geese blocks. So there you have it. 3 methods for creating flying geese units. Don't forget to click on the link in the description for the free PDF handout and the foundation pattern. Also, click like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done that already. I am always trying to be joyful, but I will always be merry. Thank you so much for watching.